The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
We're live.
Cold
We're live.
open
Everything
for the former Cold Omaha.
Everything from here on out is on the record.
So what kind of jersey?
Be warned.
Tim sucks at basketball.
Oh, hey. We can play one-on-one right now. We'll see who wins.
If you had a Spanish...
Oh, yeah. Wolves Wired. Hey. This is a fun way to do the last ever Wolves Wired. Here with David Naylor, Dane Moore, Tom Schreier, Tim Faklis. We talked about it at the end of the last podcast. I can't really hear myself. I've made some choices, and I've decided to take a step back with the writing. So with that, Zach Bennett and I started Wolves Wired. Wow, how long ago? When was the one that you were on, the first one?
It was
before Nemanja Bjelica was a Timberwolf.
It was Christmas break, probably 2015, 16.
Oh, it was.
So 2015.
It was a summer. It was a summer.
Was it a summer?
We were talking about a summer Euro.
I thought I came up for a game.
Christmas is.
No,
It's in July.
Most of my memories are I came up for a game over Christmas break.
I'm pretty sure. Okay. Well, the first one was definitely.
You're probably right.
The summer of it must have been 2015.
It must have been 2015.
We were talking about Nemanja Bjelica in a tournament. That was like the first topic. So, yeah, how long? 3 years? Holy cow!
Yeah,
good stuff. But yeah, this is the last one. It's evolved into what it is today. The four of us. Dane Moore still gonna do his thing on what's it called? The Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're still gonna have David Naylor around, writing about soccer, basketball, podcasting the whole.
Yeah, listen to the Minnesota Soccer
and
podcast.
Tom Schreier will probably be around to some capacity. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for your podcast.
Tom Ball.
When is but just let's make one thing clear. He was serious when he brought that up. I think the people want to hear Tom Ball.
I think it's going to happen.
I want to describe what this idea is, and I think it's brilliant.
Go ahead.
So Tom owns a wildly successful multimedia company here at zonecoverage.com.
Yes.
And you have writers that cover all the Minnesota sports, every single one of them. So you should have a cast of guests come on as your employees, and you should be the host. And because the best sports team in the Minnesota market is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and their best player is from Tomball, Texas, naturally the name of your podcast should be
Aaron Brooks is from Tomball, Texas.
Also,
Marcus.
Also, my first name. Sorry.
And
I was glad we cleared that
and
up.
I just had to make it
as
clear.
a former guest of the Cold Omaha staff pod or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
You've hosted pods before, and
it's true.
You're a damn natural, Tom Schreier.
It's true.
I think you can do it.
I think it'll happen.
But yes, there will still be podcasts on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network. As David said, he does the soccer.
I host the Minnesota Soccer Podcast, so that's
it's a wonderful podcast.
Would you say there's a lot of overlap between United fans and Timberwolves fans?
More than you would think,
right?
And that's only becoming more so. Like, I know several people this season who I've known, like, through Wolves Twitter and through various things that have been to their first United game this year and gotten totally hooked on it, and are now following the team much more. And the new stadium is going to draw in a bunch more people. With like, I've heard a lot about people talking about how like the impact of just seeing it go by, seeing it as people go by the stadium construction in Midway, whether it's on the interstate or on the bus or on the light rail between Minneapolis and St. Paul, like it's going to keep drawing people in. And
you might say it's in the middle.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's maybe in the middle. You can't have
silver. No, I think it's interesting that those two segments of sports fanhood seem to overlap a
it's
good
like
lot.
the Wolves are a playoff team now, so Wolves fans' natural state is this team is bad, but maybe in the future they'll be good, and that's where United is just a general thing right now. Is that accurate?
United are a very, like... You can easily make that comparison. It's funny because I'm used to making comparisons of United to other teams. That's a running bit on the Minnesota Soccer Podcast, as we see how many other Minnesota sports teams we can reference through United things.
Cross sports references.
Who do I know that does that?
It might be Tom Ball.
It might be Tom Schreier. Yeah, But it's become a running bit that we try to get all of them in this podcast. We've gotten all. I don't think we get the Lynx regularly, but we've gotten all the rest of them pretty regularly.
Yeah, other than the seasons overlapping, the Lynx are in a class of their own.
I just think basketball's natural for that because that is the off season for the NBA, right? So, like, if you're a baseball fan, you probably wouldn't want to skip a baseball game. I know each one is not that meaningful, but watching the Twins, for example, to watch United, and I don't know what I would think hockey maybe would have.
Hockey
some,
people
but
probably think soccer is like sissy hockey or something.
It's just
I don't know.
outdoor.
I got into some Twitter arguments with some hockey fans recently, so I'm bitter.
And football doesn't
Fight
seem
puck.
to have. There probably will over time, but it doesn't seem to have a huge American football.
Well, and part American football and the MLS don't overlap. American football and the European leagues, that people like to
And
watch
that's-
more overlap a lot. But you can do both in the same day because the European leagues play in the morning, and the NFL games don't start until noon.
And
so you can do the doubleheader all you want for those games. That's not
most
an
of the
excuse.
Euro games are on Saturdays too, and
Exactly.
if you're
Like-
unless you're a diehard college football fan, NFL games are on Sunday.
Yeah, and even if you are, like, the latest the game starts typically on Saturdays in England is like 11 o'clock our time.
And it's like that's the premier game. There's only one of them. Most games are at 7
Now, if you're-
or 6:30 or 9.
If you're getting up for the 6:45 kickoff,
you're a
dedication.
Liverpool fan.
And I will say, if you enjoying delicious alcohol, which I know many of the people present in this room do,
I don't know what you're talking about.
the fact that you can go to a bar and start drinking at 6:30 in the morning might appeal to some people.
that's class.
I'm not going to be able to get the image of Dane taking that sip out of my head for the rest of the day.
Both hands on the bottle, like
It was more the puckering up for the drink.
I'm drinking Gatorade.
in a Derek Williams jersey,
draw
mind
your
you.
conclusions. There.
yeah.
That's not even a real Derek Williams jersey, as we established.
Thanks, Ben Remington.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't he the one that brought
Ben
that
Remington brought that in.
So
good.
basketball happened
Basketball,
last night.
well, sort of.
It happened.
It's kind of weird. It's weird to me that they decided to throw an extra series in there after the Warriors beat the Rockets in the NBA Finals like 2 weeks ago. I
Hey,
don't know.
J.R.
It doesn't
Smith's
make
waiting
any
for
sense.
Game 5.
Yeah, he thinks that they're still winning right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Warriors won the title. The series was kind of lame, but I mean,
Game one was very interesting.
let me
I
start
don't
with
think the
this.
series was that lame.
game one was interesting. I don't know. It just always
what-
felt inevitable.
Will we remember J.R. Smith 5-10 years from now as the guy who was running around shirtless after they won, kind of partying J.R. Smith, or will we remember him thinking that the Cavs were
It's
ahead?
both.
I
That's
think-
the picture of JR though. Like it's JR is all of this.
JR has many personas. He has those two. He has the want to come get the pipe JR.
Yeah,
I mean,
which-
there are several, but had they never won that first
Lack
title,
of awareness with that one.
had they never won that title, I think it would have been harder for Cavs fans to live
Yes,
down
that's-
that moment that happened. But even if the Cavs would have won that game, I mean, they would have lost in 5 probably.
That's
It
actually a
doesn't
really
really
good point.
matter.
If the Cavs don't come back from 3-1, which was incredibly improbable, right? They're where they were in 2010 again, right? They got to be.
In 2010. What do you mean by in 2010?
Like when LeBron was like,
Oh, okay. Like, what if he left? You're saying, would have LeBron left then?
well, I'm saying, so I think right now, we're assuming like the plain dealer ran a title saying kingdom done, right? We assume that LeBron's like, can't do this anymore. And
Don't blame him.
So if this happened twice without a title, I mean, I feel like the title should. I don't know if you read Mark Titus's piece in The Ringer where he wrote about LeBron, and he kind of, I asked my friend from Cleveland
As the
this.
most famous person from most famous.
Well, I thought
person from Ohio.
I thought he. Is Mike Titus lives there now? I don't think he's from.
He
there.
went
but
to
the
Ohio
article
State.
was about how.
Yeah,
LeBron
yeah.
is the most famous. Yeah.
I think, my friend pointed this out. He's like, they won a title. Like, I can't be that mad at LeBron. It'd be very different
Well,
if.
and the 2016 and 2017 teams were great teams. The team that lost last year was a championship caliber team with the Kyrie and the cast of characters that they had surrounding them. I mean, they were getting every last drop out of Richard Jefferson, and like Ed JR made 18 of 31 threes in last year's finals, and now this team, you lose Kyrie, and the supporting cast is the deflated versions of themselves.
And, I mean, the first title the Warriors won, I'm not saying that the Cavs would have won it had things been different, but they didn't have Kevin Love or Kyrie in that series.
Right.
And I think they still took it to 5 games. This was
6.
pre-6. This was pre-Durant. So, I mean, I guess that factors in, but this Cavs team could totally have 2 titles right now had just fortunes been different, Kelly Olynyk not been a jerk.
The other thing, short thing on J.R. Smith, like, we have all the J.R. moments and the J.R. idiocy and the J.R. partying and all of this. J.R. Smith has the 8th most threes made in the playoffs in NBA history. J.R. Smith has the 12th most threes made in the regular season in NBA history. Part of that is the era he's played in. Part of that is
12th most three-pointers made in NBA history?
In NBA history.
Who's 13?
Dirk Nowitzki.
Wow, that's crazy.
In the regular season.
Dirk didn't shoot threes at the beginning.
I mean, yeah.
He's never taken that many threes in his career, too. Like a surprisingly low number for Dirk.
and he'll all-time.
The top 10 all-time for threes made in like 5 years is going to be a weird list.
Oh, I apologize. He's behind Dirk by 1, and he'll pass Dirk for 11th in field goals made next year.
If anybody
probably
lets him play.
Yeah. So, like, he's got a legitimate set of shooting records, and it's not like he's played for the Rockets for 5 years. Like, he's jacked up a lot of shots always because that's J.R. Smith, but he's also made a large percentage of them, and he's done it in the playoffs to a degree that relatively corresponds to his regular season success.
I think his blunder, what it did is took away attention from Jordan Clarkson, for example, thinking he was the best player on the Cavs at one point in game one.
At all points. He definitely thinks that.
He'll miss it. The veteran, you expect him to knock down the free throws. Like there's a lot of supporting cast that was not great there. So I think the problem is J.R. Smith, by making that blunder, everyone focuses on him. Kind of narrow vision when it comes to bad teammates with the Cavs.
Go ahead, David.
It's one of those things. Like, this list is interesting because it is era dependent. JR is 32. He'll probably play a few more seasons.
He's got 2 more years at $13 million a year.
Yep.
So,
and whether or not he'll play in the playoffs as a part of
spot.
that is an interesting question. But put it this way: of retired players that he could pass in playoff 3-point field goals, 4 more to pass Kobe, 32 more to pass Reggie Miller.
They were good.
wow.
And that would move him into the top 5, depending on Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant.
Wow.
That's a fun exercise to think about. Is like, where would Reggie Miller be in all-time threes made had he started his career in like 2009?
And so, like, JR is what he is, will be what he has been, but he's made a lot of shots at a lot of big times, and that might get forgotten because of all the dumb stuff that's happened in his career, but it's a thing to remember.
I mean, he's definitely a serviceable NBA player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other people who maybe haven't watched as much regular season stuff or just some recency bias would glean something else. I actually don't know exactly where all you guys fall in the whole like Cavs Warriors thing. It seems to be like everyone is like pretty starkly, I was cheering for the Cavs, or I'm a Warriors guy. And for me personally, I've always been drawn to the Cavs and all of these final series. And for me, that was because Kevin Love. I grew fond of him in his time here, and that was when it seemed like a fair fight. I was really, really into the Cleveland Cavs. And I do think that it's going to be interesting what happens next for Kevin Love, because he left Minnesota when he left Minnesota, he was a consensus top 10 player in the NBA, probably pretty close to consensus top 5 player in the NBA. And now he's going to be 29 next year, which is not old. Yeah. In the NBA, he runs like he's very, very old. But what happens next? We'll talk about everyone. We'll talk about LeBron. There'll be no shortage of articles on where he might go. The Ringer one on the Celtics was pretty awesome. I don't know if you guys saw that. Sharks laid that all out. That makes a lot of sense that he could go to the Celtics. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about Kevin Love, who's still an all-star. What happens for him? Do they build around Kevin Love?
And it's one of those things that, like, if they want to, as some of the suggestions have come up, if LeBron leaves, which, like, I think it's pretty consensus that LeBron is leaving, but I don't think Cleveland's 100% out of it. So they're not going to make those decisions.
Out of the LeBron sweepstakes?
I don't think they're 100% out of it.
We're starting with Love, right? Not getting LeBron?
Yeah. So I guess I'm assuming LeBron's gone. Then I think it's just Cleveland's in a really weird spot. What happens to Kevin Love?
Because that's the thing is like there are two arguments. Then is you can build around Kevin Love and probably still at least make the playoffs in the East with Kevin Love as the focal point of your team. That's probably a playoff team in the East.
Yeah.
Or they blow it up right now, get as many assets as they can for Love, for
Andrew Wiggins for Kevin Love.
Stop.
Yes.
Stop.
No, just go.
How
go,
much sense does that make for just the Wolves?
So what?
Because that's the other option is they blow it up. They've got the 8th pick this year. If they tank the next year, they could get another really high draft pick the year after. Start trying to build around young talent as all of these giant contracts go off of their books.
I think you blow it up just because you look at how much they spent on this team, and if you're the owner there, you're like, you're not going to recruit players to Cleveland. I just don't think that's going to, even with Kevin Love there. I also think the idea with Kevin Love here was that he wanted out, right? He wanted to go to LA or he wanted to go to a bigger market or whatever. And it was in part because the Wolves didn't have a plan and that whole Woj piece, but it was also has LA ties.
Sure.
And if you're Cleveland, I think that's what is his contract? How many years?
He's on the books till like 2021, I think.
Really?
Something like that. I think
he signed a 5-year max there.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
I just wonder how Cavs fans would feel about, because I honestly don't know. Would they be more angry at being a perpetual like 6, 5, 7 seed in the East without LeBron?
Do they want to be the Hawks?
Or do they want? Are they going to be more frustrated being like the pre-LeBron with like super young Kyrie Cavs that suck, but there's still all this flexibility and possibility for the future? Because like with Kevin Love as the team's best player, I mean David, you said it. That team could be pretty good, and George Hill as a point guard, maybe with a little bit more freedom, might be better than he's been the last year and a half.
And you pick up in this draft, the 8 picks probably going to get you a pretty good player that can play right away.
That team won't suck. It just won't be very good. So it's whether or not you want to be stuck in the middle, or if you want to just totally blow it up and start over. If it were me, I would blow it up without even thinking about it. But I can totally see why they'd want to just build around Kevin Love.
For the record on Love's contract, he's under contract through 2020, but 19-20 is a player option.
Right. Oh, 2020, my bad.
Do you think he go to LA, or is that? Let's say LeBron doesn't go there. Just real quick,
he's not a free agent. He doesn't have that choice right away.
I'm just trying to think of how he would get there. Like, what would LA offer?
Well, that's what I was kind of thinking for Cleveland. If I were Cleveland, and I think we have an example from last summer, is you try and go the Victor Oladipo route, and in moving LeBron and or Kevin Love, you try and get back a player, an asset that you think can be more in a bigger role.
Kuzma? I mean, who would that be?
Kuzma, the one I'm thinking of, and now he's not as young, but in a LeBron to Houston situation, maybe Eric Gordon.
Interesting.
Eric Gordon's not as young as Victor Oladipo, but
he was in Kevin Love's draft, if I'm not mistaken, so he's 29 as well.
Yeah, he's I was going to say a year older than me. He is a year older than me. But yeah, I think maybe you go with something like that, and then you could keep Kevin Love, or you dip out on Kevin Love and try and get back. Yeah, I don't think you'd be able to get Kuzma back for sure. I mean, and you got to make the salaries work in that sort of way. But I think that's what I would go for. But the Ringer brought up in the Boston option was Gordon Hayward, Marcus Morris, and a first-round pick for LeBron.
And what was Kyrie? They moved Kyrie, or how did they? What was the deal there?
No, that situation, Kyrie would be on the team.
That would be amazing.
What?
Yeah,
that team would be really good.
And that's part of what makes the Boston dynamic so interesting is because Kyrie's already there.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, I looked at that piece a little bit, but I was kind of like,
LeBron. He could.
LeBron's
if he wants to flex, he can just say, trade Kyrie.
Yeah,
flip Kyrie into something else. That's definitely possible. I mean, Kyrie is a very good asset to be had.
Andrew Wiggins for Kyrie. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just going to throw Andrew Wiggins trade scenarios intermittently.
Kyrie Irving style.
You don't
rating, and do we really want to give up on the high ceiling potential?
Just being a jerk. I mean, I think the reason why that's a better deal than the Sixers is that Boston's players are not the Embiid Simmons upside, right? I mean, they're good. I
But
know
the
what they did.
fit with Embiid and Simmons is, I'm kind of with that Screech too, Tim.
No. I think you missed.
I think Tatum is close. I think
Okay.
he's really close to that person.
Does LeBron hold Tatum back?
No, I think Tatum's a good
I think
enough
you're
shooter that he could be an ideal number 2 option with LeBron.
And what have we seen be maximized alongside LeBron? An elite isolator. You're not going to, I mean, it's definitely not a post player. We saw Kevin Love be marginalized for years. It's another, he wants to have another guy that he can say, pass the baton to, okay, go to work, Jason Tatum. Go to work, Kyrie. Go to work, Dwayne Wade. The big guys, Bosh, K-Love, marginalized, focus on your thing. I think Tatum, that would work quite well alongside LeBron.
Especially on teams where defense is preached the way it is in Boston. The reason Bosh was never criticized, or the Heat were never criticized for marginalizing him offensively, is because he became this defensive god in Miami, and it totally changed the complexion of the team. Miami's offense was never pretty because it was always Wade and LeBron kind of tag teaming back and forth, isolating. It worked, but it marginalized Bosh. But then on the other end, Bosh was the best defensive player on the Heat.
Sure.
And that made a huge difference.
Would you, if you were a GM right now and starting a franchise?
Trade Andrew Wiggins for. Sorry, go on.
Definitely would trade Andrew Wiggins. Would you rather have your first pick be Joel Embiid or Jason Tatum? There's a 4-year age difference. That's pretty big.
Oh man, which
is a different question than
too.
LeBron, because LeBron's looking at the players he wants to go play with next. He's like, all right, who's going to be the best bunch for the next 2 years, 3 years, And so I think that in that case, it's definitely Joel Embiid. But
there's factors, because one is injuries. Obviously, Embiid has the injuries. 2 is Embiid's big contract is coming up. That's a major factor. But Embiid has shown the ability to truly dominate a game in a way that Tatum, and part of it's just he's a super young rookie and hasn't had the opportunity to grow into that yet. But Embiid has proven that he's probably the best center in the NBA when he's fully healthy right now.
I think in 3 years, it's pretty likely that Joel Embiid's the best player in the NBA.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. And Tatum could be a top 5 player without question. It's just whether or not it's just too early to be certain about that yet.
Totally.
That's the question.
So why is Boston better than Houston? Is that an East-West thing?
I don't subscribe to that much, because is the goal getting another finals appearance, or is the goal winning a ring? And for me, my answer is always the ring.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you try and find the best situation.
Do you need a team to beat the Warriors whenever you end up facing them?
Yes.
That's the reality of the NBA in
Dear God,
this
please
season.
do that. Someone.
That's the funny thing for me, because you talked.
Which is fair. Yeah, I know where you're going.
You talked about the team that you had in these finals for the last 4 years of this matchup. I was on the Warriors side, and I have been the whole time. I like watching them play basketball, and I like watching Kevin Durant be really good, even when the rest of his team isn't.
Do you guys buy into? I think this was a Simmons thing, but that Durant may want his own team at some point.
Well, he just said.
Jared Dudley tweeted.
I mean, I know he just resigned or whatever, said he would resign. But I'm saying within the next 5 years.
I don't know. I mean, how do you leave it?
Yeah.
I mean, they just did not play that well in the playoffs and just so easily won the championship.
It's true. Okay, so if it's not Durant leaving, here's a question: who is the most likely player between Draymond, Clay, Durant, and Steph to leave?
It's
first?
Clay. It's Clay, because his contract's up first.
But
he
said he's going to sign that extension this summer too.
Yeah, just like Durant. So I'll back up. Let's say all 4 of them were on their last year. Who would be the one that you would expect to be like, sorry guys, I'm out. I want to try something new?
Oh, though that way. I was going to say if you were them, who would you choose?
No, if you were
that answer is obviously
in
Draymond.
All 4 of their shoes. Is it?
I think so. If you're Bob Myers or Steve Kerr or whatever, that would be the one.
It would significantly change their defensive identity,
Again,
but I think they could figure it out.
I'm not saying you're Bob Myers or Steve Kerr. I'm saying you're all 4 of these guys. Because if I'm Draymond, I'm like, am I going to be anywhere near as useful on a team where throw him on the Wolves? Yeah. He's obviously still a great player, huge piece. Is he that much more useful when he's not throwing the ball back out to Durant, Steph, and Clay?
That's always been the question with him, and the assumption is, I think, been that no, he wouldn't be very good, but we don't actually know that. I mean,
well, it's the question of what does your team look like if Draymond Green is the best player on your team,
right?
Which is a fascinating question. Like,
Tim and I have had this conversation before, and I think you brought up a good point that he is at a minimum Ben Wallace, who was 3-time Defensive Player of the Year and a huge part of them winning a championship in 2004. Draymond definitely has more offensive aptitude than Ben Wallace, even though his shot was so bad this whole playoffs. I think it would be I'll say this. Draymond is the one I would most like to see on another team because I don't know what that would really look like.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we know what KD would look like. Steph, you run your offense through Steph. Pretty much know what that's going to look like.
So the theoretical picture is the first team popped in my mind. What does Draymond look like on the Milwaukee Bucks?
Hopefully starting center and like fourth tallest player.
Right? Like, because it's like you set him up with like defensive pieces on the wings around him. You set him up with at least one really good shooter in Chris Middleton. Yeah. And like you can kind of use him as a playmaker to set up through other people.
I like this idea.
That kind of thing is like that could work on a team like the Wolves, for example. Like, I don't know how well that works because you're essentially it's another person that relegates Towns to the outside, in which you'd be very good because Draymond playmaking and kicking it out to Towns from three works. But I don't know if it necessarily maximizes things. I don't know if the wings are good enough shooters on the Wolves to make that work as well as it could.
In theory, if you're bringing in Draymond, you're a team that's saying we already have a really good offense, and boosting our defense to top 5 in the NBA is what's going to make us great, which is Milwaukee and Minnesota. That is both of the situations for both those teams. Is
good offensive stars where
they need that. They need and we had this conversation last podcast. We were like, even you bring in Avery Bradley, it's like, who is a good defender. Even if you brought in 2 Avery Bradley clones and they just guarded everything, the Wolves are a middle of the pack defense, maybe top 10 defense,
maybe, but like 9th
and still
or 10th.
have no shot at competing with the Warriors.
It's crazy. Like, where were the Celtics in offensive efficiency this year? In offensive rating, were they top 10? Because they were kind of, I
got it.
Guy with computer, me. Here we go. No, but like,
know this.
The Celtics were an amazing defense, and I think a pretty solid offense, at least, especially with Kyrie. But let's say Kyrie was healthy. Let's say Hayward was healthy. Mm-hmm. Just totally healthy team, flying high. They take the Warriors to what? 5 games? Maybe 6?
The Celtics
22nd?
18th.
Ooh, okay.
In the regular season.
That's not terrible. So they're like almost the inverse Wolves in that sense. But that, I don't know. That whole thing shows me
that being first is so different than being fourth.
Fair.
Right?
And especially when first and second were so far and away different from third and fourth in offense.
Well, and if you want to make that comparison, the Celtics have 18th on offense and first on defense by 0.1 points in defensive rating over the Utah Jazz, who were 15th in offense and second in defensive rating, and really, really close to that kind of profile.
Can we back way up? Because I wanted to ask a question about LeBron joining another team that I didn't ask. And it was Houston. We talked about Houston. Chris Paul and James Harden are on this team in this scenario, right? Like, neither of them go, correct? How, like, people were talking about James Harden and Chris Paul sharing the ball. How on earth does that work with another guy who probably demands the ball even more than those two?
Dude,
like,
what if they...
Like, I understand that...
What if they use him as the ball screener? What if they use him in the Capella role?
Does LeBron go there knowing that he's not going to get the ball that much? Maybe he might, because
he's clearly shown that he's like, I'm cool with doing the stuff that makes me work a lot less.
Fair.
You run him through the high screen over and over again. They don't even actually set screens anymore. I don't know what happened.
To be clear, I'm not asking the question like, is LeBron a good fit? Because like, if you're a team that has the ability to get LeBron James, you're incredibly dumb to not go do it. Right. I'm just wondering, how much better are the Rockets with LeBron than without him? Obviously, they're better because they have LeBron suddenly.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. It sounds stupid, but I know what you're saying.
Thank you.
Isn't the... Go ahead.
I mean, okay, well, let's just the hypothetical I threw out was a trade. Let's say the Rockets give up Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson, and
you get rid of Anderson. That's a start.
A first round pick. Just okay, fine. Say it's because Ryan Anderson's a negative contract. So let's just say Eric Gordon and multiple first round picks go to Cleveland, and so that's the core of your team. That team beats the Warriors.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
definitely, right?
So my thing is Harden.
How much better? Okay, but how much better is LeBron, Harden, and Paul? Three guys that, at their best, have the ball in their hands, and not, with the exception, I guess, of Harden, none of them are great. I mean, Paul and LeBron are very good shooters, but none are elite shooters.
Right.
Thompson, Draymond, Durant, and Steph. Three of them are elite shooters, and all of them are good without the ball in their hands. It's just more cohesive, and they have the defense already.
But
just
as
like
good
the
as they are
Rockets
at shooting, Harden, CP, and Bron are at isolating.
That's true.
You know,
That's
it's like
very true.
if you broke it down points per possession, those are it's different ways of being a great offense.
Yep.
And then.
Well, and then
if the Rockets keep the off, sorry, David, and if the Rockets keep the offense going, the style going, where it's just all the role players essentially are shooting a crap ton of threes. It's not like you lose in points per possession. I like hypothetically.
Right. I think that comes down much more to what Golden State has around the big four,
right?
Because you have Andre Iguodala, who will be another year older and has shown signs of wear and tear, and is 2 more years under contract for Golden State. Same with Sean Livingston, 2 more years under contract there through 2020. Other than that, it's whoever Golden State vacuums up with minimum contracts and everybody else.
They'll have that taxpayer mid-level, which they used on
Nick Young.
Swaggy.
Yep.
This year.
Swaggy champ, or swag champ, how did he say it? He's been tweeting this morning like he's very, very drunk, and I respect the hell out of it.
He's one title away from Adam Morrison.
Do you know who's tied with Adam Morrison? JaVale McGee.
Hell yes. And they both are beating Kevin Garnett now.
So it's this year's cast of Nick Young, Zaza, David West, JaVale, and Looney, McCaw, Damian Jones, Jordan Bell.
So many freaking centers.
Yeah, like the only ones of that entire crew they have under contract are Bell and Damian Jones going into next season.
Yep.
My favorite thing about Bell is he's considered a center, but when I watch him and Kevin Durant's on the floor, I'm like, God, Bell is short.
He is. But my assumption would be that Jordan Bell is their day one starting center. I think next year. And I could actually also see them rolling with Zaza again at the beginning of games, like he was the what do we always call it, the Keith Bogan starting role, where it's like you play the first 5 minutes of
if you want a Wolves
quarter,
tie in Irvin Johnson back when they were good.
Yes, that's one actually. Because we're here, that makes a lot more
Wolves
sense.
Wired. Do you want to hear a story real quick because it's related to the so I'm back working at the elementary school. That's what I'm doing instead of writing about basketball. And I wore my Wolves Wired T-shirt to the school. You'll like this. Some kid looked at it and was like, "Wolves weird?"
Yes.
Anyway, sorry. What were you saying?
That Zaza Pachulia is weird too. No,
we should have him on the podcast.
That's the thing though. Is like, look at what the Heat did. They got the Mike Millers. They got the. We haven't even really seen a ton of like quote unquote ring chasing in Golden State, right? Like Zaza, honestly, Zaza would be the one like 2 years ago signed
David
for
West too,
way less than he would, and David West, both centers. Like, I mean, I wonder if they could actually make their team better this summer by bringing in a couple of like minimum guys. Vince Carter, I like that too. Yeah, get a ring. Get a ring.
The one name I saw tossed around for the taxpayer mid level was Joe Harris.
Yeah,
which would be an interesting.
Well, I mean, it's like all the guys that we've kind of been talking about for the Wolves. The wings. I mean, hopefully the Wolves are going to be able to clear enough space to be able to offer the actual mid-level, which is 8.6. But as of right now, all the Wolves are in the exact same spot as the Warriors.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
They just won a title. They just won a title. Yep. That's facts.
Same financial situation.
Yeah.
That's just
minus the titles and the promise and the hope and all that other stuff.
The Wolves have one playoff win in the past 4 seasons, and the Warriors have 3 titles.
The Wolves players under 25 are significantly better than the Warriors players under 25.
Woo!
That is a
better than
fact.
Quinn Cook.
Win.
Yes, better than Quinn Cook.
Is
Fact.
that it?
Four
Who
of
else
them?
is under 20? Oh, Jordan Bell.
Bell, Jones, McCall, Looney.
Yeah.
Looney, gone.
Towns, Tyus, Wiggins. Who am I missing?
Marcus George's Hunt.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Take that, Kevon Looney.
So there's your one saving grace is that eventually Golden State has to get old.
Yeah,
Like
no,
that's the thing is eventually they get old. 'Cause
and that is how we tie. Yeah, that is
Iggy and
that is-
Livingston are.
I guess the scary
aging.
thing is, like, players that get old that shoot as well as players that shoot at an elite level generally age slower than, say, your Kobe's, for example, who's a great
Iggy.
shooter, but aged, as an ISO guy. Durant and Steph and Clay are all elite shooters and probably are going to be so for a long time. So they could age more gracefully than others. Whether or not that results in titles.
But don't
and
you
good
think
defense-
they are going to need new Livingstons
Yep.
and Iguodala's?
I
though?
think that
I
was the
don't think
problem
it's
that-
enough.
Yeah.
As weird as that sounds, just having those 4 Warriors guys, I don't think that's going to be enough to continue to win championships.
This was the first year where I looked at the Warriors. I'm like, they're not really that deep. They're just so top heavy that no one can beat them with the starting lineup. They
Literally,
have.
lots of heavy players.
Yeah.
You wonder that if they look at trying to move Iguodala, like sometime in the maybe not next year, but the last year of his contract in 2019-20,
Yeah.
if they can get younger and move him as an expiring, that might help them moving
they
into
should.
the second phase of that. That's one of those things that that's going to suck for them, but it would be the right business decision to do if they can find a deal that works.
I'm totally with you there. Yeah, it's. I started writing and I wanted to publish it this morning, but I'll do it tomorrow. Just kind of about, I'm sure we all, as our friends, think of us in the room, our collective friends think of us as like their basketball person, So I got a bunch of texts of people yesterday like, oh my God, could have told you this is what it would be. We knew this once Durant signed there in July 2 summers ago. It was just going to be these championships. And there's just kind of this which isn't wrong. They were right. But there's almost this kind of somber element to this Warriors championship, right? Like these finals were like, oh, but game 1 was kind of cool. And JR, that's what we have to latch on to. But you know what? Even if these finals sucked, and even if you fall in the mindset that the Warriors you don't like the Warriors aren't fun, the NBA is still freaking killing it.
So
we're here and able to have a pretty in-depth conversation about all these different elements of the game, and from roster construction to we haven't even touched on the draft. Like, it almost doesn't matter that the end result is the Warriors championship. Even if we knew that for next year, the process along the way, Tim, which we've talked about, is still fascinating.
I mean, a couple of thoughts on that. No guarantee LeBron was here, right? 2 Game 7s, Boston's a rising team. It seems like Indiana's an interesting one where, could they thrust? What would they have to do to get into the Philly-Boston conversation?
They got some space to work with.
They have cap space in one really, really promising star. It would be really nice, like we talk about having Tyus make a leap, or Patton somehow making a leap, or Wiggins figuring it out. If Indiana can get Miles Turner to make some sort of leap, that would make them more interesting. They need a couple more top heavy pieces. We're talking about the Warriors being really top heavy, maybe not having a lot of depth. They need more guys that are closer to Oladipo and elite talent to be there, but they have they're on the right track.
And
they won the same amount of games as the Thunder did this year.
Yeah, so
they won the same amount of games
and
as
they
the Thunder.
smoked the Wolves at the beginning of the year, if you remember that.
So there's that. There's LeBron. Where is he going to go, right? And then
That's a thing?
yeah, I heard it's big. And even I people are going to say, well, the NBA can't be thrilled that this was only 4 games, and I don't know what the ratings look like and all that. I don't know if that matters when people are actually watching the other games. They're not just tuning in for the finals; they're checking in to see everything in between.
And I think not everybody's watching games on League Pass like we are, but I have a sense that people are into. It's Thursday night. I like Chuck and Shaq and Kenny talking about it, and I'm going to watch this Pacers-Hornets game.
But I mean,
TNT regulars, Pacers Hornets.
I think ESPN and TNT have to be happy with the ratings in the regular season. Just people tuning in to watch the big matchup.
And even if the ratings were bad, I think that they could trust the process of where this is kind of
The,
gone.
the league's also going to flip at some point. At least the East looks like it's Boston. It's going to be Boston and Philly. You know, like
I'm not even sure that like the East feels like it might get top heavy, depending on where LeBron goes, because it feels like Boston's at the top. Philly should be on their way to the top or getting there. Both of those have been mentioned as LeBron topics or potential destinations. Yeah, that's the word. Toronto seems like they might be headed towards
the Atlanta route or
the disaster route, depending on how their offseason shakes out, because I have no idea what that team's going to do.
I think that's going to be the assumption, is that they're headed in that direction, and I understand. I mean, they fired their coach. That they just got like.
I think they should trade DeMar DeRozan for Andrew Wiggins.
That'd be really funny.
Wiggins, Wiggins.
Still,
that's number 4.
My point is, they still have their same team that just won the most games in the Eastern Conference. Yeah. Going to have a new coach, and they have 2 very good young pieces. 3 if they bring back Van Vliet in Siakam, Anunoby, and Van Vliet.
So do they keep the band together if LeBron goes to the West?
Sure. I think you keep the. I think you keep the band together no matter what. There. Yeah. I don't know, because I don't know what else you do.
Trade for Wiggins, and Wiggins becomes a legend.
I mean,
or hilariously not a legend.
It's when you're a team like that, you try and get to the finals and then see what happens. What I'm going to hold on to from this season is that the Rockets were very close to beating the Warriors in Game 6 without CP3. And it seems like now that Chris Paul would not have even been able to play had they made the finals. Yeah. So the Rockets almost went to the finals without Chris Paul. Like, that was a very close thing to happening. I think Cleveland beats Houston there. I think Boston beats Houston there. And I think Toronto maybe beats Houston there in that situation. So you just get there. Just get there, and
who in the
everyone
West?
In the league is looking for a broken ankle or something like that. That's the reality.
Let's say, when I'm asking all these questions, LeBron goes to Houston. Who outside of Houston intrigues you in the West? And obviously Golden State.
Timberwolves.
I mean, is there space for the Wolves to lock down the kind of the 3 and linger?
If they replace Jamal Crawford with a guy that can play a little defense and maybe even grab another guy like Keep Rose for the league minimum or something.
LeBron with the mid-level.
I did mention that was definitely happening on Twitter last night. I had a couple of beers last night.
Tips calls dibs.
Let's say you sign like a Marcus Smart, Avery Bradley, whatever have you, a plus defender to replace Jamal Crawford that has probably the same level of offensive efficiency as Crawford. And then you retain Rose or whatever have you, a similar team. I think that there is plenty of space to grab that 3 seed and keep it comfortably, barring bad health.
So then the questions surrounding that are: we look at the teams that were around them for that 3 seed this year, because obviously that race was so close for so long.
Yeah.
They're better than Portland.
They're better than Portland. I firmly believe that.
Did Portland fire Stats, or they still have them?
No, they still got them.
There was talk about it I don't think it was ever a real thing.
They got about
suggested
dumb of a roster construction as the Wolves do.
Yeah, well, and
the Warriors.
Andrew Wiggins for CJ McCollum.
I think Denver will be interesting because they have another roster that's going to get better just with time, or at least it should.
You know who I think will be the 3 seed next year? San Antonio Spurs.
Yep, which is another option.
And Kawhi Leonard is employed by the Spurs.
Would you be shocked if the San Antonio Spurs got the 3 seed without Kawhi Leonard?
No,
because I would not.
Not even a little bit.
I don't think any of those teams you're talking about right now are very good.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd be a little surprised.
Where's Utah? Like in that list?
Utah's in
the question.
Denver and Utah are in the conversation. The conversation that makes this most interesting for me is, where does Paul George go?
Yep.
The Lakers. I think it feels so confirmed right now. I'm sorry. It really does.
And then, because you have to have the conversation, if Paul George goes to the Lakers, if Paul George and LeBron go to the Lakers, where are the Lakers in this conversation?
Yeah, that's been my whole thing.
3 seed.
That's the thing. They're in that conversation if that happens.
On top of that,
no, they are that conversation. Yeah. They're end of that conversation.
Going back to the conversation about where LeBron goes, if he goes to the Lakers to team up with Paul George, how is that better than where he is right now? I know that they would probably they'd be in the West.
Let's think about it.
Paul George is a better player than anyone he's handing out right now, which helps a lot.
My point is, you go to LA and suddenly your teammates are Paul George, maybe like Lonzo Ball. I don't know. Is Brandon Ingram still there?
You need like 8 guys.
No matter what happens, that team is not going to beat the Warriors, and it's probably still not better than the Rockets. Like, what's the point of going out to LA facing like more difficult competition in the West?
What about?
It just doesn't make any. It's a tougher road to make it into the finals.
No matter what, that team's not going to beat the Warriors.
Yeah, I think so.
Well,
well, it's obviously the Warriors are the more likely thing. But didn't we just give like that Boston a chance there, and Houston we definitely give a chance. Like it would need to go really well. Let me try and put this together. LeBron, Paul George, Kuzma, Lonzo, maybe
Ingram.
They can bring back KCP because they'll have his bird rights. Then they can't
pay Randall, so Randall's probably gone. Right?
Randall's gone.
Randall will be gone. They could, but that's the thing is like if they get LeBron, they can bring back these guys explode in salary, right? Because they're not going to be repeater tax.
My whole thing, and we talked about it when we were talking about David's mock draft on Twitter. I'm not that big. I'm not as big on Kuzma as some people are.
Right.
And I'm definitely not big on Lonzo Ball, just as a complementary piece to types like Paul George and LeBron. My whole thing is, I don't think that supporting cast is very good.
So what
about a mid-level guy though? Like, is that worse than like the Wolves? It's the same thing like the Wolves are too. Is like
okay, then you're the Wolves.
So the argument,
which is the 3.
The argument,
but yeah. Which is okay. You win.
Whole
the argument with the Lakers as opposed to the current Cavs, right? Because it's why would he?
Current Cavs are shitty.
Yeah, current Cavs are, but the current Lakers are shitty too. If we're going to go there, but
they don't have Paul George though.
So what about?
Let me talk.
Yeah,
Let me talk.
Sorry.
Kuzma's 22. Josh Hart's 22. Zubats is 21. Ingram's 20. Ball is 20.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to the Cavs crap. Like,
sure.
You have room for development. You have the opportunity to build a team with all of these young, talented guys who will buy in. If they get star players like LeBron and Paul George on that team, it depends on how you feel about Luke Walton as a coach, but that's a team that I could see making a real big leap.
Yeah, no,
just with that young talent alone.
I'm not comparing the Lakers with LeBron and George to the Cavs directly. My point is that team will not beat the Warriors, so why even go?
So if you're Paul George, why?
It's not absolutes though. Like
it's not an
the
absolute,
Warriors. The Warriors
it feels like an absolute.
But right now, Vegas, it's like 50-50 odds if you want to bet right now for the Warriors to win the championship next year. Maybe that's a smart bet. So let's say it's 60% that the Warriors win the championship next year. It's not 100%, and that's what I'm talking about. Like these aren't absolutes. So we're trying to find things within the 40%. The 40% is real that someone else wins it, and a lot of that is filled up by Houston. But weird stuff happens. Like real weird stuff, not like UFO weird, like Chris Paul hurts his hamstring weird, and like I don't know. So if they buy in that sort of way, I'm mostly like trying to speak this into existence because for me. I want to enter next season believing that somebody else can compete, can win the championship. That's probably part of the reason why I picked Toronto and Houston when I said who's going to make the finals, because I want that to happen.
How about this scenario? LeBron goes to Houston. Why wouldn't Paul George go to New Orleans and play with Anthony Davis?
It depends.
Over like the Lakers.
I saw that as a low key place for LeBron too. I don't know if he'd have any interest in going there.
That'd be interesting.
Do you want to talk LeBron Davis first?
Well, let me just make this clear. I'm not saying, or I kind of was saying actually, that there's no way that LeBron, Paul George, and that Lakers team can beat the Warriors, and I kind of believe that, but I also completely understand that if they go there, the guys they already have are super young. Mm-hmm. Brandon Ingram could thrive next to those guys. Lonzo Ball could thrive. Julius Randle could thrive, whatever have you. I don't know. I'm really pessimistic about that core that they already have there. And it's just, like, if I was a free agent, I wouldn't look at those guys and think, that's a future championship group of role players. But I could be totally wrong, and I totally understand that.
I think people out there think much higher than you do.
Definitely.
About Kyle Kuzma and Brandon Ingram.
Yep.
But I personally, I'm closer on your side of the spectrum of that I think Kuzma's a good player, but definitely reaped the benefits of playing for the Lakers. And Brandon Ingram,
he's intriguing to me. I don't know.
There is becoming to be like a consensus that Brandon Ingram is going to be like an all-NBA player. Like when you talk about the people who are looking at like who's that next crop, I don't see that. I don't see that in Brandon Ingram, but other smart people out there, do. And LeBron's a smart person.
He is.
I just think that might be somewhat intriguing to him, and you're in freaking LA.
True. What do you got?
Can I go back to Paul George? So
Yes.
if he doesn't, I mean, in all seriousness, why wouldn't he go to New Orleans unless LeBron goes to LA?
Well, they're also in a very difficult financial situation,
Yeah.
and Boogie's a free agent too. So
you would let Boogie go, right?
But they can't outright sign Paul George. Like they don't have any cap space because
Drew Holiday's making a nice amount of money
Andrew,
as well.
like Wiggins money almost.
Yeah, Rajon Rondo I think is making a decent amount of money. Like
he's free agent.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That he's a free agent. Okay,
And
but regardless,
Boogie is-
Anthony Davis is making a
Mirotic
boatload.
and Solomon Hill
There
are
it
their
is.
killer
There it is.
contracts.
Yep. There it is.
And even like I like Etuan more, but he makes between like $7 and $9 million or something
Right
like
about
that.
9 exactly.
And
They're in a tough spot. Maybe Wiggins for Anthony
they
Davis.
can't. That's the thing is the Pelicans. If the Pelicans are going to add to that core, it needs to be like a CP3 situation, which is where he opted into the final year of his contract and forced his way into a trade. Paul George doesn't have that. LeBron does have that. So LeBron can take that option of opting into his final year. That's how he gets to Boston. That's how he gets.
That's how he gets more easily to Houston. Yeah,
more easily. Yeah, that's that he's getting. That's a huge asset there. Paul George has to go somewhere with cap space. There's obviously the hometown tie of LA, and LA is going to be one of the only teams with cap space.
And they have like you guys have been saying, and I've been
boatload of
disputing.
cap
They
space.
have young talent. It's intriguing, especially for a guy more so of Paul George's case because he's a little younger than LeBron. He has the time to actually like grow with a team and be a team star player with a bunch of young talent that could grow with him.
God, the Clippers cap is atrocious.
where a great spot for Paul George to go to would be that has one of the few teams with cap space. Indiana Pacers. Well, that would be a great fit.
That would be amazing.
And then LeBron goes goes to Boston to play with Kyrie, and Kevin Durant actually doesn't sign with the Warriors and re-signs with the Thunder.
I'm in on that. Let's just go back to 2016, 2015.
Everything was better then.
Was it?
No.
Was it?
The finals were more competitive. The Warriors didn't win them. For me, it was. For you, David. Yeah, I don't know.
It was an enjoyable set of 7 games, but
What I was saying before is that I honestly, if the Warriors win the next 4, and as not a Warriors fan myself, that is going to subtract very little for me personally from the NBA.
Agreed.
Because I think there's so much along the way of building, because eventually the Warriors do get old, and eventually someone else is going to come up and it's going to actually be a contest again for winning the finals. LeBron will be probably out of towards the end of his career by that point, and it's up in the air. Who is that going to be? What team is that? And honestly, the Timberwolves are in that conversation.
Yeah.
Philly's a team with cap space that could sign Paul George if they strike out on
That'd be
LeBron.
interesting.
Yep.
I've even heard people mention Paul. I mean, this is silly again because LeBron is LeBron, and you should never say no to him because of fit. But I've heard people mention how Paul George fits better next to like a Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid.
What are your top 3 destinations for LeBron if you had to rank them? Personally, just for what your enjoyment of the league, what you think works for him, like straight up just...
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Minnesota and Minnesota?
Like
Tibbs calls dibs.
Is it weird to say that I wouldn't want that?
Yeah. Yeah.
a little bit. It's a little weird.
But you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying, but it's a little weird.
Like if the Wolves won a title and LeBron was the main guy, would that feel less special than if like this core somehow managed to pull it together and win it? Is that what you mean?
What we talked about all over the course of this season was the fan base not having fun with this team.
Yeah.
Right? And some of that has to do with Tibbs, but I think part of it is as a fan base, you have more fun when you feel connected to the players on the team, that they've been there. It was that part of the Timberwolves was taken away when Ricky Rubio was traded.
Yeah.
And it was replaced by Jeff Teague, Jimmy Butler, and Taj Gibson.
I'd argue Levine too.
And Levine,
Yeah.
Levine was absolutely part
Levine,
of it.
not
Yep.
Chris Dunn. but
No.
But I think, like that. It feels better when it's been your guys. I mean, it's the homegrown talent thing like that. There's something to that.
Can you imagine that first conversation with Tibbs and LeBron? He's like, "You played 48 minutes a game once, right?" Doing that every game.
That's probably what was more exciting about the Warriors originally pre-Durant was Draymond was drafted by the Warriors.
Sure.
Clay was drafted like 10th or 11th by the Warriors. Steph was drafted by the Warriors. I don't know if you guys know this, but the Wolves actually had the chance to draft
No.
Steph.
How many times?
Twice.
What?
Actually. And they drafted Johnny Flynn with one of those picks, and he turned out he wasn't very good. But I think that part of it is fun. Yeah, and the Wolves could have gotten Clay. Instead, they drafted Derek Williams.
Who just
so how-
free agency tryout
I think-
with the Bulls.
A tryout.
Like a group tryout with like 12 other scrubs.
Oh, boy.
I think it's a good point. And I think the Warriors, without that cap hike, because they wouldn't have had Durant, would have been hands down one of the, like, it'd be hard not to like them. Going from a,
Totally.
you know what I mean, a diehard fan base, bad for years, probably best known for beating Dallas as the 8th seed, like until that point.
You would have more respect for the Warriors if, I'm not even saying that like having KD, but if they would have built it themselves. They did get lucky that the cap spike happened exactly when Kevin Durant was a free agent, who's the second best player in the NBA.
What if KD had left Oklahoma City? I know this is like, what if he got to DC because that's where he's from, right? What would that team look like with Wall, Beal, Durant?
They would have been really good. I bet they would have they would have competed with Cleveland to get to the finals. I don't think they would have been able to beat.
I think that team's better than Cleveland, right?
Yeah,
if you were in that
this
series,
year's Cleveland. Last year's Cleveland, I think they would have been close. Probably.
I would take last year's Cleveland.
I still think the Warriors minus Durant are better than either of those teams, but it's definitely more competitive all around, for sure. And Houston, at that point, how good is Houston compared to a Durantless Warriors? There are a lot of layers to that scenario.
For the LeBron question that Tom asked a while back,
top three.
It's hard for me to think about this question outside of what LeBron actually wants, because I'm not sure. I know LeBron wants to win titles, because that's his stated goal.
I'm saying factor everything in.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things where it's for me as a neutral viewer, it might almost be more interesting to see him go to one of these mid to low tier playoff teams and play with some different guys, play with some guys who are close.
To Toronto.
It's come up as a possibility. Every team has come up as a possibility in some regard. What if he goes to San Antonio?
It's funny that San Antonio has a great program, and that's not even no one's considering that for LeBron.
Except for DeJounte Murray.
You called a program.
What?
You called it a program.
Well, I mean, sorry, the pop dictatorship. Whatever.
Except for
goes from program to dictatorship.
DeJounte Murray, who
Minnesota,
posted a
too.
Photoshop of LeBron in a Spurs jersey within 10 minutes of the end of the game last night.
Oh, he had that ready.
He had that ready to go.
Yeah.
So I like it like that. That would be fun. That team would be terrifying, and
Give me your top. I want your top three now. Consider everything.
San Antonio, New Orleans, and Los Angeles.
And he's really good with Davis.
Say it again.
San Antonio, New Orleans, Los Angeles.
Philly's my personal favorite. I'd love to see him next to Embiid. We were talking about the Lakers' young core before.
Dude.
I am way more into Philly's young core, and
how crazy would the story be?
Yeah.
The 30 for 30 on the process is
Sorry.
that's 100% Rotten Tomatoes, my favorite movie of all time. I already know it. It's so good.
It keeps getting better too.
It does. But that's the team had to fire Colangelo, and then they got LeBron.
what if they hired
that's
David
nuts.
Griffin as GM too?
I've been saying
David Griffin
that.
and LeBron are
Bring
cool.
Hinkie
They're
back.
tight.
Hinkie back.
That's possible. John
Yeah.
Krasinski was like, "Don't rule it out. There are teams that are interested in Hinkie. He's not like this pariah of the NBA, like some people say."
He's currently working with the Denver Broncos.
Yep.
You know that?
Hinky?
Yeah, Hinky is.
Really?
Yep.
Other than, never mind. Other than being an anonymous source on a Ringer article.
That's why Case Keenum.
I'm totally kidding. I don't know who that is.
You don't?
No, turns out I'm not Ben Diedrich. Did you guys see that text that my dad sent me? Did I tell you about that?
No.
My dad sent me a text saying I'm going to sign up and give you a couple burner accounts and talk you up on Twitter.
Thanks, Dad.
Philly, I like the New Orleans idea, even if it doesn't make like financial sense. Very few of them do. So in terms of that, yes. And then third, screw it, Wolves. Give me Wolves.
All right.
I eliminated financial concerns out of it. The Wolves can just trade Wiggins.
For LeBron.
Yeah.
Yeah, LeBron opts in, and they trade LeBron for Wiggins. Yeah.
There we go. Bam.
I would love to see him go somewhere where he's still not the favorite, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah. Which maybe Houston would be like lesser than that, and it's hard to pinpoint a team like that. Like we could say like an Indiana or a Toronto or something like that. Like he's not going to do that, but
Or like Charlotte.
sure.
Like,
It's like
so
something,
amazing.
some MJ
Dwight
goes
Oh
for
my
MJ.
God!
Oh,
LeBron would, or I mean, MJ would come
Dwight,
out.
LeBron, and
Dwight.
Kemba. What a trio.
MJ would come out of retirement,
or
Play one season.
or if he like signs for the Suns and they have the first pick, trade up for another top 10 pick.
LeBron and some rookies and Devin Booker.
Yep.
There's
Or-
a squad.
It's a great squad.
What if the Suns just turn all their youth and assets into like the banana boat and and then they have LeBron and
Suppose
Devin
Chris
Booker.
Paul is a free agent.
Yeah,
Yeah, technically.
Melo's bad. So's D Wade.
Yep.
I looked it up that Dwayne Wade was one of 3 players who shot worse from mid range than Andrew Wiggins this season. 3. There was only 3. The other was De'Aaron Fox and Ben Simmons.
Wow,
Ouch.
Simmons is shooting with the wrong hand.
He
Well, and there's another guy that's going to get Wiggins money pretty soon. He's shooting like, well.
He's better- he's better than Wiggins.
Ben Simmons is really good.
yes.
Really, really good.
His limitations are different than Andrew Wiggins because he has one.
And I think he knows his limitations to a certain degree. All right. You got to go to a thing.
I got to go to a wedding, and I'm not going to answer Tom's question.
That's fine. That's cool.
I think I'll say Boston. I think of the
That's your
seemingly
fave?
realistic ones, because I think given their assets, they could continue to retool year over year and get better and better, and like then adding like Anthony Davis on top of that is not out of the question.
That's
like-
insane.
It's,
Danny Ainge is good at his job, man.
That's why this stuff matters, man. That's people are like, oh, just attach a first to it, and like, oh, the protection's on the pick. Who cares? That stuff matters. That is, and another like frontier of the NBA that is also makes it awesome is that such an important piece of what NBA chop talk is about roster construction, and the CBA is like a freaking nightmare to comprehend. But I think there's some fun in that. Like it gives you something to strive for. I don't know. It's NBA rules.
Basically, what you're saying is God bless the trade machine for letting us not actually understand it and just throw stuff in there.
That's for trades. There's free agency.
So
other sorts
ESPN
of
needs to
things.
design a convenient gadget where we can just throw free agents into a thing and let
Yes.
us tell you if the contract works or not.
Yeah, or just, but it's so hard to like right now you see all these people throwing out like how much money teams are going to have in cap space, and it's like, well, we don't actually know that because it depends on what cap holds they, get rid of or this and that. It's complicated.
Yeah.
It's all just very complicated, just like Bulls Wired.
That was weird.
Well, it's not going to be complicated in about 5 minutes because it's going to be over.
It is. I'll say I'm just. This has been awesome for me this year to do this show with you guys. I would say I came on last, but it wasn't that much later than
By like a month after me, yeah.
right. No, but it's just it's cool to have people and listeners who want to spend parts of their life talking about the Timberwolves in I would say, a deep sort of way. I mean, not that we could be shallow also, but we
Especially Tom.
Yeah.
Classic Tom.
True.
No, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. And Tim, I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Thank you.
You got it. It's been fun. We started on this podcast is old, not an old one, but it's old enough where we started on the Hardwood Paroxysm Network, which Hardwood Paroxysm doesn't exist anymore. And we were in this little dinky office that didn't have real microphones. And then we went to the Cold Omaha Podcast Network with Tommy when that was a thing. This is with Zach Bennett, by the way, not you guys. But David was in the Don't Ditch It, Fix It studios when we were there.
That's true. I on the second episode ever recorded of Wolves Wired, I was in the Don't Ditch It, Fix It studios,
and,
live and in Technicolor.
It's been a lot of things, but this group was probably, I mean, it was the most fun that I've had writing about the NBA, and I appreciate all three of you, and it's been a lot of fun. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks for letting us add to the history of Wolves Wired and letting us be a part of this, because that's it was your baby before it was any of us, and that's been it's been such a privilege to be a part of this and to be a part of all of this this season and this covering this team and writing about it and getting to just learn stuff from people a lot smarter than I am about this a lot of the time, because that's still what a lot of this feels like. Is there's so much to learn about everything.
Talking
we're doing.
through it helps.
Yeah, it really does.
I mean, even it just, and I think that helps listeners too, of hearing different perspectives, because that at the end of the day, as a fan, is that what you want to? You're listening or watching because you want to gather more, and I think we've provided that this year. Is unique insight, whether it be about stupid stuff like cap holds or silly stuff like Johnny Flynn. I don't know. There was a balance to this podcast.
There's something that brings me joy about you saying deep things while wearing a Derek Williams knockoff jersey.
Yeah, it's important that you have that on for the last ever episode.
It's very important.
I am.
So, does anyone else have anything else? It's been fun. It's been a good old time. I'm going to leave my inebriation station card here as a memory of me. I think Dane's going to be the only one that gets that, but that's okay. So for the last time, David Naylor at Prof Cedar, Tom Schreier at T Schreier3, Dane Moore at Dane Moore NBA. I'm Tim Faklis at TIMFAKLIS. For all of us, plus formerly Zach Bennett, this has been The Last Wolves Wired. Thanks for listening. Woo!
We'll force your desire.